What's going on, friends and fellow artists? This is Matt, aka Mr. E in 3D. In today's video, we are going to be creating a generic form for the body of all of our characters moving forward. So what I create today, I will use for all characters, regardless of race, regardless of size, regardless of male, female, it doesn't matter. We are going to be able to take this form that I create today off of this cube, and we're going to be able to manipulate it into whatever forms we want. And then from there, in following videos, we will take this form and add the details for each individual character. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. From here, we're going to use the cube, and just like we did with our head, we are going to go into our modifiers. We are going to find subdivision. We're going to add one subdivided surface. So where H1 side was, we now have 4. We're going to go ahead and take that, and we are going to immediately apply it. Okay. We are then going to go into our object mode. We are going to go Z, wireframe, unselect everything, B, grab just that, left side, X, vertices, split the model in half. Again, just like we did with our head. Okay. Add our modifier, add our mirror modifier. Make sure we hit clipping so that we keep the model all as one piece. And from here, we are going to start working. Okay. What we're going to do first, we're going to grab this top vertice, GZ. We're going to bring you nice and flat. We're going to grab that side one, GX, bring this in. GZ on that one too while we have it. Grab X one more time. Let's grab these bottom vertices. GZ. Straighten this out. GZ. GZ. Oh, grab those middle ones. GZ. Make this nice and even. We are then going to grab the front and the back. We are going to hit S along the Y. Bring this in, thin this out a little bit. You guys can probably already see what we're starting to do. Grab that front, GZ for that. From here, we already have our basic torso, okay? Now from here, we're gonna extrude our arms, and down here, we're gonna extrude our legs. Now, I cannot just extrude the legs straight from here, okay? Because watch what happens when I E, it just brings the whole thing and makes the whole thing bigger, okay? So from there, Control Z, that out. We have to create a little gap here so that we can pull both legs out. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a loop cut, Control R. We're gonna bring that in. I'm gonna unselect. I'm just gonna grab this right here, GX. And let's spread this out a little bit so these lines don't get bunched up, GX. And then from here, we're gonna extrude our legs. So select these two faces, E, along the Z, straight down, okay? Get to about the knee, thin that out just a little bit. E, hit Z twice to make sure you're pulling it out along the Z axis, thin it out again, and then E one more time, Z twice for the bottom part of the leg, okay? Now we're going to clean up these proportions as we go. That's not too crucial to start. E along the Z. Oh, Z. The whole point of this process, guys, and it's always that forward thinking that I'm always promoting. We want to do as much work out the gate as possible. But when it comes to creating these generic forms, we also don't want to we don't want to do too much, because we don't want to have to undo work later, okay? And this, I'll show you guys what I mean by that when we get to the hands, okay? For the feet here, actually, let's just go ahead, wireframe, grab the entire bottom. Let's scale this in because this is where our feet come down. Grab Z, make this a little bit better. And then let's grab that foot, and we're gonna E along the Y and pull that foot straight out, okay? Actually, let's go ahead and create a loop cut here, Control R, down, and scale that in a little bit. There we go. That's probably better. Okay. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is basically just us getting our starting form. But we just want to get done as much as we can. at this stage, okay? Okay, so let's make those just a little bit longer. All right, awesome. So from here, let's go ahead and get those arms extruded. I'm gonna grab these two. Then you can kind of see I created kind of, you know, this rounded shape. That's because once we start subdividing it, I want that arm to be rounded, looking more organic. Let's hit E along the X. Pull that out, scale it down. E along the X, grab that, scale it down more. Let's turn it this way. Let's make sure that all of these vertices are kind of as flat as possible for when we start to do our hands. Let's grab these, grab X. Actually, let's grab all of this, grab X, and then grab X. Make sure this is as good as we can get it. Let's go ahead and add a loop cut here, Control R. That'll be for our wrist. This form's just a little bit too short, something like that. And then from here, let's go ahead and start to flatten this out a little bit, okay, for the hands. We're gonna hit S along the Z and squish them down just a little bit, okay? Now it's E one more time on the X and draw out those hands. Okay. From here, we're going to do a loop cut here, and that should be it. So let's go ahead and subdivide this surface and see what we have. Add a modifier, sub for subdivision. And we can see this is our basic form. Let's take it up to 2. Now guys, whenever I'm doing this process, I think it's important to note, I'm not actually committing a subdivision yet, okay? What you're seeing, so this is the actual form. So these vertices, these faces, this is what the form actually is. When I add the subdivision surface, what you're seeing underneath the actual mesh, that is a preview of what would happen if I applied the subdivision, okay? I wanna make that distinction just so you guys have an understanding. Nothing has actually been subdivided yet. It's just showing me what it's going to look like. So when I turn this up to 4, this is what the mesh will look like if I apply the subdivision, okay? It's just a preview. Let's take this back down to 2 so we can keep working. Let's do a loop cut here, Control R. Bring those armpits in. And let's do Control R here. Bring this waist down. Let's actually lengthen out the torso just a little bit. Those legs are a little bit too long now it's been subdivided. Grab you, grab Z, GZ, bring you down some. That's probably a little bit better. Now for the project that I'm working on, and actually most of the characters as I create, they're going to be more cartoony anyway. So having the proportions exactly right doesn't really matter a whole lot for me because I'm going to be making those adjustments for each character. But if you are doing a more realistic character, you know, obviously that matters more. Let's go ahead and add a detail here for his shoulder, just so I have that line that I need for the shoulders. Grab X there. Let's see. So I know where my shoulders are going to be, my shoulder muscles. Okay. And believe it or not, guys, that is actually almost all that I have to do to get started. It's a lot different than the head, I know. Just want to be able to basically get the generic details down. And the reason why I leave it basic as base as this is because again, different characters are going to have different features. And again, we have to use that forward thinking when it comes to what the purpose is for what we're doing. So if I were creating a character for animation, obviously, I would be adding fingers here because I'm going to be adding bones. I'm going to be adding armatures. I'm going to be weight painting this. The fingers are going to move. I'm going to have a lot more freedom down the road when I do the following steps than I do for the character model. What I'm doing for the sake of this channel is I am creating and building models to 3D print. Okay. So if I add fingers, I then have to go through the entire process of manipulating them and turning them and, basically turning them into a specific pose. If I leave my if I leave my body model like this, I can basically model out a closed hand. So using our current project as an example, it's an orc warrior. He's going to have a shield and a sword, or shield and hammer, I'm not sure yet. But both of these hands are going to be closed around those items. So it's essentially going to be like a fist, okay? So that works for him. However, let's say the next character that I make is a wizard or a mage or a martial artist, and I want to have those hands open. Well, I can't come back to this model if I've already created the hands as closed fists, okay? So I need to leave the hands generic for now, and then when the time comes for me to get into the actual character and start doing the actual modeling, I'll add the hands at that point, okay? Now I do want to go ahead, just for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to Shift D, grab this body and pull this body back, because I do want to give you guys a basic understanding of how I will go about creating hands. Because when I'll probably go ahead and save this file with the two models, one with no hands and one with actual hands. And then once I get to a point where I start creating a character with those open hands, I'll just come in here and grab this form. So I'm going to go here. And the way that I would go about doing hands is this. I would go ahead and add me some knife cuts. One here and one here. Now remember, I do recommend avoiding knife cuts if you are going to be doing different things down the road, because you're going to be, it basically takes it so that you can no longer add loop cuts to these faces, okay? The difference here is that I want to make sure that I'm not adding loop cuts to this entire frame, because the more loop cuts you add, the flatter the surface is going to look, okay? So I want to make sure I'm limiting these cuts just to these faces on the front, okay? Let's go back into vertices. Let's flatten this out a little bit more. And from here, all I would do, I would go ahead and grab this and this. I would E along the X, unselect you. Oh, that's a third finger because I still have to do the other one. So I'm going to grab U along the Y, give this a little bit of space. And then I would go E, I would select those two, E along the X, and I would create my other fingers. Now let's grab U along the X and pull you out a little bit more. And then from here, I would just make sure that my fingers were the appropriate length, so on and so forth. I would then add some loop cuts. So I would have guidelines for where knuckles are, so that I could start manipulating vertices when the time was right and make the hands posed however I want. Okay. We can take these faces here. Make sure these are a little bit flatter. S, Z. Okay. And again, I would come back in here and I would, I would make some adjustments here and make these definitely more rounder, more squared. I wouldn't have these weird angles. I'm going to leave it as it is for now, because for the sake of time. And then for the thumb, I would just come here and go E along Y. Control R. Control R. I would probably grab U. Actually, I'd probably do this. Another R here. And then just grab this face. Grab X. Make that a little bit fatter. And then underneath, not that fat. I would probably grab this because you have that little meaty part of the hand. Grab Z, Control R. Now you can see here, because I added those cuts, it's actually messing with the faces. That's okay. We're going to grab U and grab Z. You'll notice I don't actually use the line selector very often. Some people like to use it. I actually don't. It's just personal preference on my part. There's nothing wrong with it. I was trained using vertices and faces. So I'll switch back and forth between them all the time. I don't usually grab the lines. Nothing wrong with that though. And from here I now have two hands. So if I were to come in here, let's say let's just say that my next project is for a wizard and I want him to be casting spells with his hands. I would come in here and I would grab this one with the hands already selected. And then I would go ahead and start making my poses based off of that. Now again, even more so, we don't want to add details to the hands like fingernails or anything, because let's say that our wizard has gloves and then the next character has fingernails. We want to leave this as generic as possible. It really does come down to a balancing act of what can I do to make this generic model as user-friendly as possible without having to revert changes or start from scratch because he's just too detailed. So guys, that is it for this video. Again, I will be, so in the next video in the series, you're going to see me take this body and I will actually import this body into the file that we have for the head. We will begin scaling and I will begin adding details. Now, I'm not sure if the detail video is going to be 1 or 2 videos, depending on how much I have to do, but we will be getting the details done. And then from there, either 1 or 2 videos from now, we will begin the posing process and finalizing our first character, okay? Guys, thank you so much for the support that I'm seeing on the channel. Y'all are great. Please like, subscribe, share. You guys know the drill. I appreciate y'all so much. Y'all have a great day.